Stepsister bullied me at school, moved into my house, stole my room, and threw a party when my dad and stepmom were away. Now, she ran away to her dad's house and my stepmom blames me for it. Hey Reddit, I'm Grayson. I've been lurking here for a while, but I think it's finally time I share my story. It all started a year ago when my dad remarried this woman named Margareta. She seemed nice enough at first, but I soon learned she came with some serious baggage. Her daughter, Emily. Emily was the same age as me, and from the moment we met, she seemed to have it out for me. At school, Emily was part of the popular crowd. You know, the ones who always had the latest fashion, the coolest friends, and the most followers on Instagram. Me? I was the quiet, nerdy kid who spent more time in the library than at parties. Emily saw this as an opportunity to make my life miserable. She'd mock me in front of her friends, call me names, and spread rumors that I was some kind of weirdo. It got so bad that even some of my friends started to distance themselves from me. School, which used to be my sanctuary, had turned into a living hell. Things went from bad to worse when Emily and Margareta moved into our house. My dad and stepmom decided that Emily should have the bigger room because, according to Margareta, girls needed more space for their stuff. This meant I got booted to the small guest room, which was barely big enough to fit my bed and desk. It was like I was a guest in my own home. Emily didn't waste any time making herself comfortable. She decorated the room in her style, plastering the walls with posters of her favorite boy bands and influencers. She even had the audacity to throw some of my old stuff into the garage without asking me. It was infuriating. One night, I overheard Emily talking on the phone with one of her friends. She was laughing about how pathetic I was and how easy it was to take over my room. I was livid, but when I confronted her, she just shrugged and told me to deal with it. My dad and Margareta were no help either. Whenever I tried to bring up how unfair everything was, Margareta would brush it off, and my dad would just say we needed to learn to get along. The final straw came one weekend when my dad and Margareta went away for a mini vacation, trusting Emily and me to take care of the house. I was looking forward to a quiet weekend, but Emily had other plans. As soon as our parents left, she announced she was throwing a party. I tried to argue, but she wasn't having it. "Relax, Grayson. It's just a few friends," she said with a smirk. By a few friends, she meant half the school. Our house was soon filled with rowdy teenagers drinking, blasting music, and causing chaos. I tried to keep things under control, but Emily just laughed at me and told me to lighten up. Things got so out of hand that someone ended up puking in my room. My room. I was livid. I texted my dad about the party, hoping he'd come back and put a stop to it. But they were out of range. So I took matters into my own hands and called the cops. The party was shut down, but Emily was furious. She screamed at me, calling me a snitch and a loser. She said I'd pay for ruining her night. The next morning, Emily packed up her stuff and announced she was going to live with her real dad. She stormed out, and I was left to deal with the aftermath. When my dad and Margareta got back, they were pissed. My stepmom blamed me for Emily running away. She said I was being selfish and that I should have just let Emily have her fun. My dad didn't know what to say. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. Emily's dad called and said she was fine, but Margareta insisted I apologize. She even suggested I move out to make Emily feel more comfortable when she came back. I couldn't believe it. I was the one getting bullied, and now I was being punished for it. My dad looked torn, but I could see he was starting to understand how unfairly I'd been treated. That night, I had a long talk with my dad. I told him everything. How Emily had been bullying me at school, how she'd taken my room, and how she'd thrown that wild party. I could see the guilt in his eyes as he realized how much I'd been suffering. He promised me things would change, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. The next day, my dad and Margareta sat down with me to discuss what had happened. Margareta was defensive at first, but my dad stood his ground. He told her how unfair it was to me and that Emily's behavior was unacceptable. Margareta eventually agreed, though I could tell she wasn't happy about it. A week later, Emily came back home. She was still angry, but there was a new rule in place. She had to respect me and my space. My dad made it clear that any more bullying would not be tolerated. Emily sulked and avoided me, but at least the torment had stopped. Despite the new rules, living with Emily was still tense. She barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was only to make snide comments. But I didn't care. I had my room back, and for the first time in months, I felt like I belonged in my own home. Things slowly started to improve. My dad and Margarita worked hard to make our blended family work, and even though Emily and I would never be best friends, we managed to coexist. My dad made sure to spend more time with me, and Margarita even apologized for how she'd treated me. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Emily and I eventually found a way to tolerate each other. We still had our differences, but we learned to stay out of each other's way. School became bearable again, and I even made some new friends who didn't care about Emily's rumors. Life was finally looking up. So yeah, that's my crazy stepsister story. It was a tough journey, but I came out stronger in the end. Thanks for reading, Reddit.